I'm just looking down the list. I think that's just about all we have for you for the moment.
Broadcasting from central Merseyside.
3 radio stations, 3 choices of listening. The first one was Radio City, Liverpool's commercial radio station. The second, Radio Merseyside, the BBC's local station based in Liverpool. But it's the third one which was most interesting because it's a whole new phenomenon in the northwest over the last 2 years. That was the sound of MAR, Merseyland Alternative Radio, a pirate land-based station which operates every weekend here on Merseyside. The old 60s hit, Atlantis by the Shadows, played out as a signature tune every hour on the hour, means that from an 18-storey block of flats, another weekend of broadcasting has begun for one of the Northwest's biggest alternative radio stations. From a bedroom studio, disc jockey and cell-style station manager John Dwyer is back on the air.
Music that time from Depeche Mode.
It's bright, it's brash, and it breaks the law. Pop music, jingles, and most astonishing of all, commercials. Because, just like their 60s counterparts, this station sells advertising airtime to pay its way. The resemblance to Radio Caroline, Radio London, and the rest is more than just coincidence. Where they fought to break down what they saw as a BBC radio monopoly, the new so-called free radio stations say that 20 years on, they're now fighting to overturn the monopoly of the Independent Broadcasting Authority, who control commercial radio in Britain. Illegal broadcasting, say the pirates, is the only way to prove there is a demand for their kind of radio.
The weekend sound of MAR, 266 on the medium wave. Here's the Motors going back in time, and I'll play this one especially for the late night tokers.
I think there is a need for stations other than BBC and government stations to broadcast music. MAR is a purely music station, concentrating for the 28 hours of broadcasting on music, and we broadcast over a weekend because of a weekend the BBC and the IBA offload all their minority programs so that the listener is faced with mainly chat and not very much music. MAR is on the air simply to play music at a time when other stations aren't catering for the listening public.
Another tall block, another studio. But commercial radio executives in Liverpool were remarkably coy. They didn't want to discuss their pirate rivals. Programmers at the BBC's local station, Radio Merseyside, were on the other hand only too willing to talk about the accusation that both they and the independent stations use the weekends as a dumping ground for minority programs.
Well, as far as commercial radio is concerned, it seems to me commercially understandable that they would put out their minority programs at times when there is not a peak listening audience. Commercial radio is in the business of making money, and they want to attract the biggest audience they can at the major times of the day, at the main times of the day. So it seems to me totally obvious that you will put out those programs which are of minority interest at times when the peak audience is not going to be listening. So I can understand the commercial radio's point of view in doing that. However, the same criticism cannot be levelled at Radio Merseyside, because we in fact put out minority programs at peak listening times of the day. And we're constantly doing this, so that criticism is again unjustified.
Merseyland Alternative Radio.
So, while the BBC and the independent stations face their Saturday and Sunday audiences with a mix of pop and minority interests, alternative radio gears itself up for another weekend of all-music broadcasting. What's more, on Merseyside it boasts the only woman disc jockey, 27-year-old schoolteacher Anne Stand, who's in no doubt that the existing stations have failed the community.
If you listen to Radio City or Merseyside, it's geared to sort of mediocre music. For example, say Barry Manilow, things like that, all day. You just get an occasional programme where it just has sort of local bands, new music, whereas we sort of try and provide that most of the time. So where they fall down, we pick up, really.
That's a totally unjustified criticism. BBC local radio, and Radio Merseyside in particular, constantly reflects the interests and the needs of the community. We do a wide range of programmes during the 100 hours that we're on the air each week. We do programs for anglers, we do programs for local authors, we do programs for people who are interested in further education, in religion, and of course I don't think that pirate radio, or indeed any commercial radio station in this country, can ever come up to the number of programs that we produce in this area.
Well, that was We Are Glass, and that was Gary Newman.
The studios of alternative radio stations are of necessity makeshift, moving as they do from one tower block like this to another to avoid detection. But the transmitters sometimes actually outreach the BBC locally and commercial radio, beaming out a signal easily audible as far north as Preston and as far south as Anglesey, with a mailbag which reflects that very wide coverage.
Well, the programmes are part recorded, part live in the week. It takes 5 days to organise the 2 days of broadcasting. 10 DJs and about half a dozen other people, backup people, who make the station possible. It's very much run on the same lines as a normal radio station would be, with self-censoring. Programmes are recorded, various letters are sent in to be included, and we broadcast over a weekend from central Merseyside. That's central Merseyside.
And that's the brand new one from a band called Ski Patrol. Don't forget, I've got a badge of this band.
Nighttime sounds from MAR. The lights are down, and the wryly named Matt Black changes the mood.
TLCA Music Factory.
But still the commercials go out. So is Free Radio, who incidentally rarely pay any royalties on records, quite so free as it makes out.
Well, really, if all the DJs, the 10 DJs, were to put a £5 a week in, it would run the station. It's nice to be able to say, we'll do it, and we won't have any advertising, which is all very noble, but in the present case, you've got to have finance from somewhere. There's records to buy, there's transmitters to buy. It all goes down to being able to take advertising to maintain a service. And we keep the advertisements to a minimum. We only take the right amount. When one goes, we get another one. It just runs the station. It all gets ploughed back into the station. There's car stickers, there's badges, there's various other things. We have in the past donated money to charity. So the station is self-financed.
I've always been a firm believer in free radio, right back to the 60s, Radio Caroline North. And they built a monopoly then in the 60s of the BBC stations, and now MAR are doing that. It's the only way to break the IPA monopoly, isn't it?
So what do you, as somebody who sells records, get out of it?
Well, we sell a lot of records, I think. We do supply badges and car stickers through the shop to listeners, and we've got rid of thousands and thousands over the period they've been broadcasting.
We checked it out with a solicitor who went through the 1949 Wireless Telegraphy Act, also the 1967 Marine Broadcasting Offences Act, and after a week he came and said the advertising is quite legal. For the first month, MAR didn't have any adverts on it at all.
So why do people advertise now?
Well, they advertise because the rates are so cheap. The independent stations are pretty expensive, and we advertise the normal trader, the person on the street who's got, something to sell, and he won't approach the big stations or can't afford the television or whatever, and we can do it for him for next to nothing.